And welcome to the California Guy video with your boy California Guy. What's up, everybody? And welcome to this video. This video is entitled the Marvel MCU versus it's about MCU basically in the Disney model and the coming up of what's that? Guardians of the Galaxy coming up in May the 5th, I believe. So I'm just going to talk about some DC, a little bit of DC news and Marvel news, and my opinions about where the companies are going for as the film division is concerned. Now, Guardians are coming out in Guardians of the Galaxy is coming out May the 5th, and it's the continuation of the MCU films. Now we got Wonder Woman coming out also in another month or another 2 months, I think. And so I'm looking at a lot of fans and I'm reading a lot of articles about. Now, me personally, if you want to know Kelly guy's opinion about this whole DC, what I favored on is the MCU's Defenders universe. I'm more in favor of the Defenders uh, coming out, and that's what I'm really anticipating. I'm very excited about the Defenders. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I followed all of the Marvel Netflix shows. It's like they're doing basically what they did with Avengers, where you had all the Avengers solo movies, and it culminated in uh, the first Avengers movies, which was epic. And that's basically what Defenders is doing. You basically get, but I'm deflecting from that. So the Marvel news that I was basically talking about really is the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now I'm not too sure what the plot of Guardians of the Galaxy is, but the things I'm looking for with Guardians is I know they say it's more of a standalone, but some loose connective tissue now to the other MCU movies. It has to connect with Infinity Wars. Now I know you have Spider-Man coming out. But Spider-Man is a Sony movie, so I'll explain that in a bit. But I'm hoping that um, Guardians of the Galaxy really do connect with um, the Infinity Wars. That we get some tangible stuff going forward in their films. Spider Man is not. I know a lot of people have said Spider Man is actually not going to do it. It's actually again a Sony produced movie. Spider Man is basically going to be a standalone film. Yes, they do have Iron Man in it. Yes, he did come from the Civil War movie. So a part of the Netflix deal is that Spider-Man could get produced by Disney, and they're like, okay, do that, but they're basically still a Sony movie, so it's not going to be what people think it's going to be. All these MCU things. Yes, again, you have little Captain America Easter egg. They're going to be at the Avengers headquarters. I believe part of the plot. No spoil. There's a spoiler alert. Part of the plot of the movie is damage control that Stark owns damage control, which if anybody's familiar with 1980s comic books and Marvel comic books, damage control was a company that cleaned up basically after the superheroes have damages with like fighting a super villain or aliens or whatever. And so yeah, damage control. So they kind of altered it to fit in the MCU and the plot of Spider-Man with Tony Stark owning damage control, and the Vulture in them are laid off, so they get mad. They launch their attacks against New York. So basically, that's the plot of um, that movie. And then you have Thor 3 coming up. You have the last Thor movie, which is going to be Ragnarok, which is going to be in space. That's going to be a interesting movie. I think that's going to be the Civil War, basically, of this time around. It's going to be the Civil War of the MCU because you're going to feature more characters. It's going to be more Thor themed, and you're going to feature not only the Hulk, but you're going to have Doctor Strange in there. So, and I think they're doing it this way, and this is just me. People can make comments at the comment section or response videos. Let me know. I believe that Marvel did it this way with Thor, like Civil War, because they couldn't fit all the Marvel characters in the Avenger movie. And what I mean when I say that is the way they wrote their movies is like, okay, you had Avengers, which was kind of simple. It featured Captain America, the Hulk, Hawkeye, he cameoed his first appearance in the first Thor movie, and Black Widow and Shield and them kind of was through the Iron Man movie, so it was easy to kind of put that out there. Now MCU got successful. It's expanded as far as like the comic books. It expanded with storytelling, TV shows, and different films and concepts that they wanted to add in there. So like Ant Man, you couldn't have put Ant Man in Avengers, so they saved Ant Man for Civil War. That's basically what they did. That's why Civil War was around, because they wanted to utilize some of the characters from previous movies that you probably wouldn't have been able to fit without it being too convoluted. Black Panther got featured up in Civil War. That's why you didn't see Black Panther in the Age of Ultron, because he was supposed to be in Age of Ultron. They featured some things up in it. That's why you had heavy Easter eggs of Black Panther in Age of Ultron, because he was supposed to be featured in there, but they couldn't fit him in there. So Civil War made sense because you basically was able to do. They was able to execute a story with Black Panther and give kind of a loose background without going too deep into him. So that was basically the concept of Civil War, was to feature Marvel characters in coming up in other movies or from previous movies. And so they're doing the same thing with Doctor Strange, because again, Infinity Wars is coming out. There's going to be the movie where all of the characters are going to be featured in the movie. All the Avengers are going to be in there. All of the characters from previous other movies, stuff that you guys want to see. You're going to Guardians of the Galaxy, all of them. So they're like the comic book. So Marvel's on point with what they're doing. My only thing is Marvel has to be more. Hopefully, they're more innovative with storytelling this year, and it's not bland. I have no hope for Guardians of the Galaxy 2, because I really wasn't a big fan of Guardians like that. And you know what? I've read their comic books before in the past. I've never read the newer books, but I've read their older 1970s, early 80s books. So I'm not too familiar with the new run, and I'm gonna review the new run because I got some of the issues of the new run that they had a couple of years ago. So I'm gonna review those in a future video. But I am familiar with the solo characters. Like I'm familiar with. I'm not familiar with Star Lord. That's a character I'm not familiar with, but I am familiar with Gamera and those characters because I've read Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War comic books before. I've read Adam Warlock. I'm very familiar with those other characters. Drax the Destroyer, I've read him in different books. Rocket Raccoon, I've even read, and Groot. Groot's a very old character, believe it or not. Groot is a character that Stan Lee created for a monster magazine, actually for science fiction magazines in the late 50s. So Groot is basically a very old character. In fact, Groot has even fought the Hulk. I have an issue where Groot fought the Incredible Hulk in a annual. I have to think of the annual's name, but I have the annual because I have a massive Hulk collection. So he's fought Groot actually in that Hulk book and in that Hulk issue. It was a bunch of monsters that came to Earth, and Groot was one of them. And he was a very old character. So, they combined all those like the obscure, very obscure 1970s characters into the Guardians of the Galaxy comic book, and then it went into the movie. So it's amazing that they're utilizing concepts that were very obscure, and they make it into a multi-billion-dollar film. And that's the amazing thing about Marvel MCU, and to an extent the DC TV shows also too, is they're very good at utilizing obscure characters and really expanding on their stories, characters that and I've been a comic book reader for 22 years. I've been reading comic books. And I have to say, with my extensive reading of different comic books, because I know the Marvel Universe inside out. I know DC Universe, Valiant, and other companies, but Marvel I do know very well. I know Marvel inside out. I know their space universe. I know their city universe, New York, all their stuff. I've read dozens and dozens of their books. And I have to say, they've taken characters that I thought that were not really, they were below fan favorites, and they really made them into big characters. Example is Hawkeye. They made Hawkeye kind of a more interesting character than maybe his comic book counterpart. And I like the new origin and some fans will probably get mad and then say, "Well, Cali guy, you don't know what you're talking about," or that's wrong. But some changes for film is good changes. making Hawkeye into an ex-agent of Shield, I thought was perfect. In Black Widow, because their origins in the comic books are very very different. They started off kind of as villains in Iron Man comics, but in the movie verse and even in the animated verse, they kind of altered the backgrounds, and I thought that was really brilliant. Luke Cage, I like the new background that they got for Luke Cage in this TV show. So this video basically is a Marvel video. So what the hell? I was going to talk about some DC news, but I'll do that in a separate video. So Marvel, is brilliantly really expanding their universe. I have no complaints from my only movie that I'm not really feeling at this point is SpiderMan. And I know people. I've been arguing with people on Facebook and social media about Spider-Man. I'm not really feeling Spider-Man in that manner. I know they've taken from a lot. Well, I'm not feeling Spider-Man because they came out with two other Spider-Man movies in the last few years. It's not per se I have a problem with their format. Now I do have a problem with one thing that they're doing is now Spider-Man is a New York based hero and they're not acknowledging Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Jessica Jones. I do have an issue with that because I think that it doesn't make sense to a fan, the person that's watched most of the MCU films. Now, I can understand the Avengers. Now, the Avengers does exist in the same universe as these MCU shows because it was established in the first season of the Daredevil show. I was listening to a podcast with what's his name that plays Daredevil, and he was saying about them coexisting in the same world, and then you had Anthony Mackie who said they're like a separate universe, which was stupid because that's not the case because there was too many references to the Avengers in Daredevil and Luke Cage and the other shows, which they refer to it as the incident. And I'm like, when I listen to that on the shows, they refer to the attack in New York from the first Avengers movie as the incident, or it's like it's really hushed up. But when I hear Marvel say that they're gonna have Spider Man just running around and it's in New York, and I'm like, so you guys not gonna reference the other superheroes that's there that's in existence? So they got some plot holes to fill on that. And to people out there that don't know, yes, Daredevil and Spider Man and Iron Man and them are in the same universe. These are facts, and I'm gonna tell you guys why. Let me break it down real quick. In the first season of Daredevil, if anybody's seen it, spoiler alert, turn my video off. Turn my video off before you hear the rest of the second half of this video. Because I'm going to kind of speak on some plot lines for the MCU shows in the past movies. So turn it off and watch it and then come back. But in the first season of Daredevil, the whole plot of Daredevil revolved around the Avengers indirectly. Now, a lot of people say, well, how? Because in the first Avengers movie, at the end of Avengers, you had the attack in New York with the Centauri. Centauri destroyed most of Manhattan. I mean, they really messed it up. So that was what you got in the first half of the Avengers movie. The second half, Loki and the Centauri, they really messed it up. So when you see the end of the Avengers movie, you see the marches. It was like their 9/11 basically. It was basically their 9/11. So the whole plot centered on New York getting damaged up. So Loki, he crashed into the Stark Tower, and you had the Hulk in the middle of New York. So all at the police department. So everything revolved around the Avengers. Now, in Daredevil season one, Kingpin was going to renovate. Uh, it went back into shambles because the way the writers did it. And if anybody's ever read Daredevil, 80s Daredevil, anybody's ever read late 70s to 80s Daredevil and Spider Man, even. Oh, okay, well, I just say this. Any of the Marvel Street Heroes. If anybody's read late, like, I say about 1975, Spider Man, Iron Fist, Daredevil, or Captain America, even, or any Marvel comic from that period. It could have been any Marvel comic. It could have been Fantastic Four. If you read any Marvel comic from 1975 to 1990, will know that New York, the version of New York was basically reflecting real, and any New Yorkers, they make comments on my page, but it reflected real New York at the time, when real New York was filled with crime. It kind of was like my city of Oakland, California back in the day, because Oakland and San Francisco was a certain way also before it gentrified. So New York gentrified later, when New York is more, it's a little different today than it was back then, because New York was filled with a lot of mob bosses. New York was filled with a lot of hustlers and pimps, especially in that Manhattan part. Because and I say that because I'm not a New York person, but I know this from watching old news reports when I was young, and when I was a kid, Oakland and San Francisco was structured a certain way also, because Oakland and San Francisco was similar to New York City. So that's the only reason I could kind of see. In Los Angeles even too. Los Angeles was a certain way back in the 80s and the 70s. So New York was no different. It just was a bigger city. In New York, Frank Miller, when he did the Daredevil books, he brought in Kingpin and Elektra, the Hand, and all that. So the version that Frank Miller presented, even Punisher was featured up in Hell's Kitchen. That was a version of New York that was very bad, and he reflected kind of the real world. Now, this TV show Daredevil, they needed to, because nowadays New York is better. It's much better today than it was back in the 80s and early 90s. So they had to go back and they had to think of a way creatively in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to justify why Hell's Kitchen is bad. So they used the Centauri attacks as a way to justify why New York was that part of New York is bad. Why Hell's Kitchen went back to hell again, and the justification was crime went rampant because of the Centauri. Basically, if I make sense, story wise, the damage that was caused, had criminal elements to start investing in real estate properties. That's what Kingpin was doing, and the Hand, and all the Russians and the biker gangs. That's what they were doing. They came into Hell's Kitchen. That was the plot line of season 1 of Daredevil, and Hell's Kitchen went back to being bad again. But my whole point is, not to deflect, is it established right there that the Avengers existed in that world. That they had the attack on New York, and in fact, with being York, when you go to the Daily Bulletin, New York Bulletin, in that company, which was a offshoot of the Daily Bugle, you see the attack on New York headlines. You even see the Hulk and Abomination Harlem fight. So I think because of the split that the studios had, which I talked about on the California Guy radio show, which I will repost maybe on YouTube, where I even talked about the split with Marvel Studios and Marvel TV, that they broke up initially because Marvel Comics was not getting along with Kevin Feige. But that's another story. You guys got to check out my radio shows and blogs for that. My whole point is to let people know, yes, they exist in the same universe, because the first season of Daredevil sort of established that in the beginning, in season 2 of Daredevil. So they always showed that they existed in the MCU universe. Same for Jessica Jones, even Jessica Jones and me. Only thing is, it's the way they reference the characters. I think in some of the shows, like the further down you go into the shows, I think that, and this is me to fans, I think in the beginning with Daredevil, they had to Easter egg the Avengers a lot. They had to kind of do that to get Daredevil off the ground. But with the Defenders, they established their own little universe, kind of, so to speak. If you really think about it, Defenders is doing what the Avengers did in all their movies. Because if you look at all Avengers movies, they were able to establish their own movies plus other things in that universe, such as Hydra. They established Hydra, Super Soldier Serum, certain military aspects. They've introduced a lot of Stark tech, all those different things in the MCU and Shield. So Defenders, basically, they're introducing another offshoot, like the comic books. Basically, it's just like the comic books are the same way. If anybody read Marvel, they're introduced the Hand. They're introducing certain criminal aspects of the MCU. They're going into crime noir type stuff, more grounded up stuff. Versus, and it's like that in the comic books. So if anybody reads Marvel comic books back in the past or currently, they'll tell you that, okay, you have the Fantastic Four and Avengers. They do more global stuff. Then you have Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a street level hero. Daredevil basically replaced Spider-Man in some ways because they didn't have the rights to Spider-Man. So Daredevil sort of introduced that street level for the MCU. Because in the comic book, Spider-Man kind of in the '70s comic book. And shout out to my co-host for telling me about Spider-Man not being a street hero no more. Spider-Man used to be a deep street hero like Daredevil, if in the '70s and the '80s and early '90s. But Spider-Man now is like Batman, so basically he's more like a superpowered, adventurer. But Spider-Man in the '80s, and I've read so many Spider-Man books, they were really grounded up. He had dark stories such as the death of Gene D. Wolfe. He had stories such as with the Sin Eater. You had the Spider-Man Game Wars, because a lot of the crime stuff came out of Spider-Man's books. Believe it or not, the stuff that you see in Daredevil comes from Spider-Man. Punisher was introduced in Spider-Man. The Mob, Maggie, they were all introduced in Spider-Man books. Kingpin was a Spider-Man villain. Kingpin came through, and it's funny because in the Marvel Universe version of, and I'm going in the long. I know this is a 20-minute video, so I'm sorry, people. This is a long video, but in the comic book version, Kingpin's existence came in because of Spider-Man. Spider-Man kept destroying mob bosses. If you guys read the original 616 stories that Stanley put out there with Spider-Man, is Spider-Man kept messing the mob up. So Kingpin was able to fill that shoe in and become the dominant mob boss of the Marvel Universe. So that's basically how Kingpin came into existence. But in the Defenders universe, it's the same thing. Basically, Kingpin became the crime lord of New York City. So you're seeing his build up. But I think, and this is just fan speculation, that Kingpin's power is going to come in when the Defenders eliminates. They put Kingpin in prison for a reason, and the writers people gotta understand the writing. Kingpin was put in because Kingpin, even though he was powerful still in Daredevil season 1, he wasn't at Kingpin levels that I followed in the comic book. In the comic book, when the Hand came to New York, Kingpin used Daredevil and Elektra originally and gave them information to eliminate the Hand when they were coming into New York with their invasion in the Frank Miller run. So if anybody, check those out. Two very good issues with Frank Miller, one of the best Daredevil stories. But he utilized the Daredevil and Elektra and Gladiator and other people to get rid of the Hand and Stick, to get rid of the Hand out of New York so he could be the dominant without him getting his hands dirty, because that's how Kingpin was. Same for Silvermane. When Silvermane turned into a cybernetic, and then people don't know Silvermane is a crime lord, also a rival of Kingpin. When he turned into a cybernetic machine, Kingpin used Spider-Man to take him down. I digress. So basically, in the MCU Defender universe, they basically show where what was I saying? Oh, they show that Kingpin was at power, but they still had the Hand there. You see that in the first season of Daredevil, because again, Daredevil is the Iron Man of the TV shows. So everything kind of started in the Daredevil season 1 and maybe part of season 2. So basically, Punisher and Daredevil has eliminated all of Kingpin's rivals, and to an extent, Luke Cage even in Luke Cage's show, it eliminated certain aspects because again, Diamondback took out a lot of mob bosses. Also in that show, they took out Russians and Puerto Rican gangs. So this fills the vacuum of Kingpin's crime lord stuff when he comes in Daredevil season 3, which I believe will be epic. So, and you're getting more plot lines with Milan Circle also too. So again, the MCU Defender shows, Defender universe is on point. My only thing is I'm going to see some Spider-Man stuff in that universe. And people, check out the Tumblr campaign from the New York Bulletin too. I recommend you check those out. Those are pretty fun. If you're a fan of the old shows and old comic books, and you're a fan of the street level characters, I suggest you check it out. Like and share this, people. Excuse me. Like and share my video, people. I know this is a 24-minute video. I don't normally go this long, but like and share this video, and let's discuss this whole Marvel's MCU universe. Peace out.